Before we begin with my WildCard 2024/2025, I guess if you will, NFL predictions, let me just give you a quick note here that I am a little bit under the weather. If I don't sound as energetic today, if I sound a little nasally, again, I apologize to you. I have orange juice right here next to me. Let me go ahead and take a real sip here. Listen, we're pretending like we're on the air here at a radio show. Obviously, I don't want to miss making my playoff predictions. I want to try to get through this the best I can. So, as tradition here at Brandon's World, you guys know that, weeks 1 through 18 of the regular season, I typically do what I call my best bet, which is where I take five regular season games. Of course, usually there's 16, sometimes there's 12, 13, 14, just depending on bye weeks. But generally, I take five games and I pick the spread. And then I also make money line picks for all the games. I'm going to continue making money line picks for all the games. Now, of course, there are six games on the docket this weekend, wild card weekend, two on Saturday, three on Sunday, one on Monday. What I'm going to be doing is to stay with that typical 5 game range. I'm going to admit one game. The one game I will admit is the Packers Eagles. Obviously, I have bias in there because my Eagles are playing. I also think, with the Jordan Love injury, the Jalen Hurts situation, everything that's going on there in that game, that's going to be the game that I personally stay away from. So I will bet the rest of those games. As always, our odds are provided by FanDuel. Let's get into it. The 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday game, the first game of the playoff, which will be called by Ian Eagle and Charles Davis over on CBS. You have the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Houston Texans. Jim Harbaugh got the Los Angeles Chargers, as I predicted in the preseason, back to the postseason. They won 11 games. They were able to get the number 5 seed. The Houston Texans, they enter this game 10-7, but they have really struggled over the last month. Of course, they started this offseason in a big way, acquiring Stephon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills, acquiring Joe Mixon in free agency from the Cincinnati Bengals. Once Stephon Diggs went down with his torn ACL, the offense started to struggle a little bit. And then, really, over the last month, the run blocking for the Houston Texans has not been very good. Joe Mixon has not been very good in the run game. Their offense has been sputtering. Last week they did go down against the Tennessee Titans. They did get that opening drive touchdown. But again, this is a Texans team that is in a very weak division. And in my opinion, you could make the case that if they were in, the AFC East, the AFC West, the AFC North, maybe they would not be a playoff team. As much as CJ Stroud had a great rookie year, him as well as offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, who, if you remember, at this time a year ago, uh, was a hot coaching commodity. He came back to Houston, and this Texans offense does not look the same. I think J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, the emergence of Lan McConkey as a true number one legitimate weapon for this Charger offense, led by Jim Harbaugh, going up against the DeMeco Ryans led defense. I just don't think Houston has the capabilities to stop a Charger team that I think is going to ball control. I don't think this is going to be a very high scoring game. I could see a 2017, a 23-20. I think it will be relatively close because I don't think the Chargers really have the capabilities to blow anybody out. But I think their coaching and that defense led by Jesse Minter, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, they will get after a piss poor Texans offensive line. I think the Chargers win. I think they cover the 2.5. Now, this next game, Steelers at the Ravens. You guys remember a couple weeks ago, the Saturday before Christmas, these two teams played. Pittsburgh was coming off a bad loss to Philadelphia, where, they did not have the ball the last 10 minutes of that game. Um, Now, obviously, they did not have George Pickens in that game either, and their offense significantly struggled. But if you remember that game in Baltimore, I took the Steelers plus the points. At the time, it was 6.5. I thought it was too many points. I just don't like giving Mike Tomlin 9.5 points. I feel like the Steelers, listen, they don't play well offensively. Russell Wilson has not been the answer, and I've tried telling Steelers fans this for years. The Steelers, as great as they are, and the culture they are, and defense, and the blue blood franchise, if you will, of the NFL, they have not won a playoff game since beating Alex Smith and the Kansas City Chiefs 9 years ago. And guess what? They won that playoff game by not scoring a touchdown. Does that sound familiar to this year? Ever since Todd Haley was let go as the Steelers offensive coordinator in 2018, Pittsburgh has ran through many offensive coordinators. Of course, Matt Canada to Arthur Smith to all these different guys. It has not fixed the issue. The Steelers' offense is very predictable, very vanilla. They are a run the ball, either inside zone or at back pitch to Najee Harris or Jalen Ward. And then they will throw the deep ball, excuse me, over the top to George Pickens. That's all they do offensively. Now, I think their defense will keep them in the game. Lamar Jackson, he's not only 2-4 in his career in the playoffs, he's 2-4 in his career against Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Listen, they could not stop Derrick Henry and a runaway train of the Ravens offense. I get the Marlon Humphrey pick six changed the game in that Saturday game, but regardless, Derrick Henry was running all over the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I can see it happening, though I do think that George Pickens being back, I think there's a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson. I think playoff football is different. I think we will have a real conversation in Pittsburgh here if they get rolled by Baltimore, which again, I don't think the Steelers have the offensive capabilities to do. This is going to be Amazon Prime, Saturday night. Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, the first ever Amazon Prime playoff game. I think if Pittsburgh gets rolled, especially with the way they would have a 2023 Philadelphia Eagles-esque collapse, start 10-3, finish the year, including the postseason, 10-8 down the stretch. In my opinion, Pittsburgh would have to have a real conversation about maybe moving on from Mike Tomlin. And I've been saying that for years. I don't care that they're a defensive first culture. I don't care they have this over 500 record. They are really an average football team. Though again, it's a divisional rivalry. They play the Ravens well. Is there a world where Baltimore absolutely goes in there and steamrolls Pittsburgh? Yes, I'll see it. But knowing Mike Tomlin, I'm just going to take the points here. I think Ravens win, but they will win by less than 9.5 points. This, I think, will be your blowout of the weekend. Denver going to Buffalo. This is the 1 o'clock CBS Sunday game. It will feature Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wilson, the A crew for CBS on the call. Listen, we know how historically rookie quarterbacks do in their first start in the postseason outside of CJ Stroud last year against Cleveland. Not been good. I think Josh Allen of the Bills, I think they go in there. I think that, this Denver team, they beat the Chiefs backups last week. Yes, they did. They got into the playoffs. I think that Denver is one of these seven seed teams that if we were under the old NFL playoff format of six teams for playoff, they would not be a playoff team, obviously. They feel like a team that should be happy just to get into the dance, just to get into the postseason. And so, in my opinion, listen, I think Bo Nix had a very good rookie year. I think he's the second best rookie quarterback in this year's class behind Jaden Daniels right now for this season. I think Caleb Williams, with the right coach, hopefully in Chicago, will eventually get there. But for right now, if I was ranking quarterbacks, it obviously would go Jaden Daniels and then Bo Nix. I predicted Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos to have a very good year under Sean Payton. My debate partner over championship rings, Josh Unger, even called Denver getting into the postseason. I did not necessarily see that, but I thought that, they would be well improved. Their defense under former Broncos head coach and current defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, they lead the league in sacks so they can get after the quarterback. I just think Buffalo, yes, they have, or excuse me, Denver, yes, they have faced Patrick Mahomes. They have not faced this Buffalo offense. Last year, when they, nearly beat Buffalo, or excuse me, they did beat Buffalo. In Buffalo, it was led by Ken Dorsey, who has now been fired as the Browns offensive coordinator. They did not face the Joe Brady led Bills offense. I think that's a big difference in this game. Again, I think Buffalo has a big game here. It's a big ask for Denver. 1 o'clock on Sunday, 11 a.m. body clock start time. Going into that cold in Buffalo, I think the Bills cover 8.5. So this is the game that I said I'm not going to bet. 4:30, Fox, Sunday. Kevin Burkhardt, Tom Brady, Aaron Andrews, Tom Rinaldi at the link. Packers, Eagles. Question marks all over the place about who will start at quarterback for both teams. Jalen Hurts seems to be on the right track to start for the Eagles. Jordan Love seems to be on the right track to start for Green Bay. I do not anticipate neither of those men missing this game. This is a rematch from the week 1 game that did not take place in Philadelphia. Instead, it took place in Brazil. Remember, that was the game where there was a question about if the Jalen Carter hit on Jordan Love below his leg was dirty, which I did not think it was personally. Uh, but, these two teams, even though they have super sharp quarterbacks, it's really all about the run game, right? Saquon Barkley from Philadelphia nearly breaking Eric Dickerson's record for the most rushing yards in a season by a running back. Right behind him has been Josh Jacobs, who I did not think would make the impact in Green Bay that he's done. And, these defenses, led by Jeff Hapley, the more Boston College head coach for the Packers, Vic Fangio, a longtime defensive assistant, former head coach in Denver for the Eagles. These two teams are pretty even. I think the biggest difference is I think Philadelphia, no matter who they go up against, which is going to be Detroit, Minnesota, the Rams, Tampa, Green Bay, etc. I think they have the best offensive line, defensive line combination in the league. I think Jalen Carter, Moon Williams, Jordan Davis, an interior rush to go with Josh Sweat, to go with Nolan Smith, to go with Bryce Huff off the edge will get more pressure on Jordan Love. I think Philadelphia will be able to sustain their running game. The Eagles, the last couple times they have played Green Bay, though this is a very competitive matchup. They have been really able to run the football against the Packers, especially in second halves. You remember that game in Brazil? Jalen Hurts had two bad interceptions early in the game, which the defense held down to field goals. I think if Philadelphia limits the big play, do you remember that was a big part of the Packers? They got tremendous big plays from Reed and Wicks early on in that game. I think that with Quinyon Mitchell now seemingly growing into his own, this is a different Eagles defense week, let's call it 19 here, wild card weekend, than it was in week 1. I think that's the difference in the game. 4.5 seems about right. I have it about, 24-20, 27-23. Maybe Green Bay gets in the back door, covers it by half a point. There's another world too where I think it could be like 34-20 Philadelphia. It really just depends on how fast of a start this Eagles offense gets off to. I have Philadelphia winning the game. Commanders at Tampa. This is the Sunday night game, which I will be completely honest with you. I was a little bit surprised that this was the Sunday night game. I thought Packers Eagles would be the Sunday night game. I thought this would kind of be buried in the 1 o'clock window on Sunday. Jaden Daniels is first start against Baker Mayfield. But I think it says something about Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. The fact that they went from 4 wins and a complete disaster last year. Mr. Snyder was selling the team. Ron Rivera was head coach. Sam Howell was quarterback all the way to they have a new owner, Dan Quinn head coach, Cliff Kingsbury star offensive coordinator, Jane Daniels becoming a star quarterback out of LSU, and here they are in prime time, another week 1 rematch against Baker Mayfield and the Bucks. Now we know Just like rookie quarterbacks how their first start in the playoffs often does not go well, we know how rookie quarterbacks week one, it often does not go well, and it did not go well for Jaden Daniels. It was easily his worst game of the season. He really did not throw the football down the field. Todd Bowles and that Tampa Bay, their blitzing style of defense, got after Jaden Daniels. I think he was surprised by it. I think Washington will come in more prepared. I think they will be ready. I think they will give Tampa Bay a better game than what they had in week one. And again, I think, no Chris Godwin is a factor, but for this Commander secondary, that is not a very good secondary. We'll see a Marshawn Lattimore, who has had success against Mike Evans in his career when he was in New Orleans. If he can play and shadow Mike Evans and do a decent job on him, that is the one chance, in my opinion, that Washington has to win this game. Because Tampa Bay, even though Baker Mayfield is throwing this ball all over the yard and he's played well, they have really turned into a Bucky Irving run the football team. They went from one of the worst teams rushing in the league to one of the best this year, led by offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, who I did not know who was going to replace Dave Canales when he went to Carolina. Liam Cohen has fit in seamlessly there in Tampa Bay. For Tampa, I think the one worry about this game is, they did not look great against the Saints. They lost to Dallas, obviously, down the stretch here. So is Tampa Bay maybe not as good as we thought? Is the offense a little bit too inconsistent? And will Jaden Daniels put on a rookie showcase? Can Washington pull off the upset? I think they could. I think this is a very high scoring game. I still like Tampa. I think they cover the three. I think it's again a 3, 4 point game. I think at worst here, I should get a push taking the Tampa Bay side. Now, we get to Monday Night Football. Vikings at Rams. The Rams. I understand somewhat why they're underdogs by a point and a half. I get it. The Vikings are 14-3. The Rams are 10-7. But, the Rams, they beat Minnesota in week 8. Now, that was a Thursday night game. Obviously, the Rams now are going to come off rest. And instead of going for the number 3 seed and having the opportunity to play Washington, they essentially decided that they were okay with playing the loser of the Vikings Lions game, which ended up being Minnesota. I think with the Vikings, we talked about this on Tuesday. Sam Darnold a little bit got exposed by the Detroit Lions because a lot like Jared Goff, and we saw it order from the Minnesota defense. If you pressure Sam Darnold, he will panic and he will not make good decisions. And, there's all this talk in Minnesota about what are they going to do with Darnold? Are they going to extend him, trade JJ McCarthy? Are they going to let Darnold go? Is someone going to offer him? Are they going to franchise tag him? I think a lot of it has to deal with what Sam Darnold will do in this football game. I think Darnold with rest, Kevin O'Connell, who's one of the brightest young offensive minds in the game, he is called the tall Sean McVay, excuse me, when he was in Los Angeles, back when he was with McVay in LA with Jared Goff for a reason. I think they will come in. I think they will play well, but I think McVay will know what to do to stop this Vikings offense. I think they will frustrate Justin Jefferson once again, just like they did in the first matchup. And I don't know. I think, Brian Flores' card is obviously blitzing. I think if you blitz Matthew Stafford, it's a big mistake because Matthew Stafford will pick you apart. I think with a week of rest, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp going against the weak part of the Minnesota secondary, which is their defensive backfield. I think the Rams, they beat Minnesota in week 8. I think that they are the better football team. They have more momentum right now. And Minnesota, in my opinion, will go from beating Green Bay and going 14-2 and having a chance at the number 1 seed to being eliminated from the postseason in 2 weeks. What a crazy time to be alive. So to recap, I have the Chargers over Houston. I have Baltimore over Pittsburgh. I have Buffalo over Denver. I have Philly over Green Bay. Tampa over Washington. The Rams over Minnesota. That means I have the Chargers being the only road team that wins this weekend. If my predictions come true, divisional round weekend will be a divisional round matchup in the AFC West featuring the Chargers going to Kansas City. Baltimore will go to Buffalo. In the NFC, we get a week one rematch between the Rams and the Lions and a week four rematch. Same thing with Buffalo Baltimore, by the way, would be a week four rematch. This is another week four rematch as Tampa would go to Philly. Once again, my five best bets for the wild card round of the 2024 NFL season. I like the Chargers covering the 2.5 against Houston. I like Pittsburgh not to win, but I'll take them plus 9.5 against Baltimore. I like Buffalo to cover 8.5 against Denver. I like Tampa to cover 3 against the Commanders, and I like the Rams getting a 1.5 against the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football. I'll stay away from Packers Eagles. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.